All right, hola ustedes. Bienvenidos, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the second part of chapter 2, how to form questions in Spanish. This should be a little short lecture. And I've also realized as I've gone back and watched the last couple of weeks how fast I talk and how little time I leave when I ask you to repeat a sentence or a word. So I'm working on those two things, speaking slower in English and in Spanish, and leaving more time for you to repeat the words before I move on to the next thing. So here we go. See how I do. There are three basic ways of forming a sentence into a question in Spanish. We'll look at those in a couple different slides. Basically, an overview. There's an interrogative tag, adding a word onto the end of the sentence that signifies it's a question. There's beginning the sentence with a verb instead of a subject, pronoun, or a noun. And then also using a question word, who, what, where, why, etc. in Spanish. So we'll look at these three different ways of forming questions in Spanish. So the first way we're going to talk about is just using a regular sentence, but changing the pitch of your voice at the end of the sentence. So like if we have, you are going to the store. If I say, you're going to the store, by the time the pitch of my voice, even in English, you recognize that I'm asking a question. I'm not just making a statement. So that's called the intonation method of asking a question. The words stay the same order, but we're just raising our voice. In the white box in the bottom, I have a representation of that pitch with those arrows going up. So I'll have you repeat after me. Ustedes trabajan los sábados. That's a sentence, a statement. To make that into a question, we would say, Ustedes trabajan los sábados. And you can hear with los sábados how my voice raises up at the end. So, clase repitan, ¿Ustedes trabajan los sábados? Muy bien. Second example, Carlota busca un mapa. That's just a declaration, just a sentence. The question, repitan, Carlota busca un mapa. You can hear the little cracking in my voice as that pitch raises up at the end. And that's how we can indicate that we're asking a question just by changing the pitch of our voice, by raising up at the end. Okay, you can also ask a question by changing the word order. Again, typically we go subject, verb, and then objects or other nouns. In Spanish, for example, the first statement, Ustedes trabajan los sábados. It's just a statement. We have pronoun, verb. In Spanish, to make that into a question, we would put the verb first. So the same words, just in a different order. ¿Trabajan ustedes los sábados? So, clase repitan, ustedes trabajan los sábados. And to make it into a question, we would say, ¿trabajan ustedes los sábados? Okay, second example, Carlota regresa a las 6. Okay, Carlota returns at 6 o'clock. Make it into a question, ¿regresa a las 6, Carlota? Regresa, you'll recognize that as a conjugated form of the regular AR verb, regresar. Now, in that sentence, regresa a las 6, Carlota, as long as a question, the verb is first in a question, the other order isn't quite as important. So you could actually say, regresa Carlota a las 6, and it would be the same thing. There may be a little bit of a different implication or a different inference, but that's okay. It forms a question. So the verb first, and then the nouns and the other parts of the sentence can follow afterwards. So that's the second way to form a question, by putting the verb first at the beginning of the question. Okay, another way is by adding interrogative tags. And this tag comes at the end of the sentence, and it's words like no and verdad, which in English, the equivalent would be right or don't you, or you know. It's making a sentence and then adding something onto the end. So if I say, you're going to the store, right? The you're going to the store is basically a sentence, and I'm making a question at the end, right, as in agree with me, and that's how we're asking a question. So again, in inglés, en español digo, ¿ustedes trabajan los sábados? And then to make that a simple question, ¿ustedes trabajan los sábados, no? Repeat that, okay. And then Carlota regresa a las 6. Repeat that. And now repeat, Carlota regresa a las 6, ¿verdad? You'll notice the upside down question mark, which always indicates a question in Spanish, comes at the beginning of the question part. So the first part of those two sentences on the right, the questions, ustedes trabajan los sábados, that's the statement. The no at the end is the question part. And so the question mark, the upside down question mark comes before, and then the question mark after just that no part, because that part's the question. Carlota regresa a las 6 is a statement, ¿verdad? At the end is a question part. And so that's where the upside down and the following question mark come to indicate that's a part of the question. And the reason we do that in Spanish is just so that when you're reading, you can know to form your voice correctly because a question is coming up. Okay, then the other way is by using interrogative questions. So it's like an interrogative tag, but it's a word, and now it comes at the beginning of the sentence. So these you'll have to memorize. This will be your vocabulary for this sect, is to memorize these 12 or so questions. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to say it in Spanish, if you'll repeat after me. Then I'm going to say it in English, and I'll have you again repeat it in Spanish. That way you hear yourself answering the English translation back into Spanish. So clase repitan. ¿A dónde? Where to? ¿Cómo? How? ¿Cuál? Which? ¿Cuáles? Which ones? ¿Cuándo? When? ¿Cuánto? How much for masculine? ¿Cuánta? How much for a feminine noun? ¿Cuántos? How many for masculine? ¿Cuántas? How many for feminine? ¿De dónde? From where? ¿Dónde? Where? ¿Por qué? Why? ¿Qué? What or which? ¿Quién? Who? ¿Quiénes? Who, plural. ¿Quiénes? Muy bien. So you'll notice in cuál and cuánto and quién, they're made plural just like other words. Add an S or an ES depending on what it ends in. And then some of these some of these question words have gender as well. So cuánto or cuánta, cuántos, cuántas, singular, plural, feminine, masculine, and then quiénes, plural. So in English, we say, for example, if you say, how much sugar do I put into the cookie dough? Okay, sugar is a singular noun, so we use how much. If it's eggs, we don't say how much eggs, we say how many eggs, because now the subject is plural. So the same thing in Spanish, cuánto for singular, or cuántos for plural. Same thing with quién and quiénes. If I say, ¿quién habla español? I'm implying that one person speaks Spanish, and who is that person? If I say quiénes hablan, because now it's plural, so the question word as well as the verb have to be plural. Quiénes hablan español means I'm expecting an answer of more than one person. So who all of y'all speak Spanish, for example. Okay, so the next way of forming a question in Spanish is by using an interrogative word, these 12, which you're in the process of memorizing. All right, so to do that, the interrogative word comes at the beginning of the sentence. And some of these words, there's very some crossover in meaning, and we'll come to that, and you'll perfect that. It's not a big deal, but there are just some subtle differences. So I'm going to repeat these 8 sentences in Spanish. I'm going to have you repeat after me. I'm going to go down the first column and then down the second column. So if you'll read the words, listen to me pronounce it, and then pronounce it after me. You'll notice too, and I think it says in the next slide, that when you use question words, we don't necessarily go up with the tone at the end of the sentence, because the question word itself, the interrogative word, is already indicating that question is following. Clase repitan. ¿Cuál de ellos estudia en la biblioteca? ¿Cuántos estudiantes hablan español? ¿Dónde trabaja Ricardo? ¿Qué clases tomas? ¿A dónde caminamos? ¿Por qué necesitas hablar con ella? ¿Quién enseña la clase de arte? ¿Cuánta tarea hay? Okay, muy bien. Let me point out here on this first one of the second column, ¿a dónde caminamos? You've all been told your whole life, and it's not necessarily accurate, that in English we should never end a sentence in a preposition. Well, in Spanish, you literally cannot end a sentence in a preposition. So we take that preposition a, which means to, and it goes to the beginning of the sentence, and it goes with that question word. So you could not say, ¿dónde caminamos a? Where are you walking to? You have to would say, ¿a dónde? And there is another one on this page, de dónde, means from where. So you can't say, where are you from? We can't say, ¿dónde es usted de? We have to put the de of or from to the beginning. So de dónde and a dónde are two examples of that, where the preposition comes and forms part of the question word. Okay, so here it is. When pronouncing a question that uses an interrogative word, the pitch of your voice falls at the end, and or at least doesn't rise. So, ¿cómo llegas a la clase? ¿Por qué necesitas estudiar? So that question word is going to have the top of the pitch, and from there it's just going to go down or even level out. But we don't have to raise it at the end like we do when we're just making a sentence and forming a question with a regular sentence by raising the pitch of our voice. Now, there are two similar words. ¿Por qué? Two separate words with an accent means why, and ¿por qué?, which is one word without an accent, means because, and it's typically the answer to why. So imagine, you got a 3-year-old, why? Because I said so, why? And they go back and forth, why? Because, why? Same thing in Spanish, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué? So the ¿por qué?, when it's a question mark with the accent, is usually pronounced a little bit more separated between the two words, ¿por qué?, as opposed to ¿por qué? And again, that's just a statement of because. So los ejemplos que se repitan. ¿Por qué estudias español? ¿Por qué es divertido? And divertido means entertaining or fun. So why do you study Spanish? Because it's fun. And yes, it is. All right, we talked about in a previous lesson that words like do and does in English are really just helping words. They don't really form part of the sentence. They definitely will indicate an effort or reaffirm a positivity of something. So I do work really just means, yes, I really do work, right? We're just emphasizing the do, that is a positive statement. So in Spanish, no can mean no and also do not or don't. So when you answer a yes or no question in Spanish and the answer is going to be no, you have to use no twice. So if I say, do you eat bread? And you say, no, I eat bread. That doesn't work. With only one no, you're affirming what I just asked you. You would say, no, I don't eat bread. So in Spanish, same thing, but no counts for twice for both those words, no and the don't. So, for example, in the white box, caminan a la universidad. Do you walk to the university? No, comma, no caminamos a la universidad. No, we don't walk. So we always say in English, again, you shouldn't use the double negative. In Spanish, double negative is the rule when you're answering a question, a yes or no question with no. So no, comma, to say no, and then the second no, it goes with the verb saying we don't do that. Okay, so here at the bottom we have some examples, and I don't know why my PowerPoint didn't click in, so let's go through this. Javier is not here. In Spanish would be Javier no está aquí. No, I don't like the color. Be no me gusta el color. So the two no's, when we're just making a statement, only one no is enough. When we're answering a question with a no, we need the double negative to say no and to do not. All right, so here's your chance. I'm going to have you go ahead and pause the video for a second. You're going to number a paper from 1 through 6. You're going to take these 6 statements and you're going to make them into 2 different questions. The first one, you're going to use the intonation method. Means you're just going to change the pitch of your tone. And the second one, you're going to use a tag using no o verdad at the end. So go ahead and pause your video, write down your answers, and then come back. We'll check the answers and we'll work on pronunciation. Okay, so number 1, ¿hablas inglés? ¿Hablas inglés? So it's the same thing, right? We haven't changed word order. We have just a regular sentence. A question mark starts signifying that we're writing a question, and then our tone of our voice is going to go up. And then to add a tag, ¿Hablas inglés? No. Or ¿verdad? At the end. So class, let's go through these three forms. Repeat after me. ¿Hablas inglés? That's the statement. ¿Hablas inglés? That's an intonation mark. ¿Hablas inglés? No. Muy bien. Número 2. Trabajamos mañana. Clases repitan. Trabajamos mañana. ¿Trabajamos mañana? Trabajamos mañana, ¿no? O trabajamos mañana, ¿verdad? Muy bien. Número 3. Repitan. ¿Ustedes desean bailar? ¿Ustedes desean bailar? Perdón. And the tag. ¿Ustedes desean bailar? ¿No? O ustedes desean bailar, ¿verdad? Número 4. Raúl estudia mucho. Okay, repitan. ¿Estudia mucho Raúl? Okay, and this one we have switched the subject and the verb. You can still say Raúl estudia mucho, as long as your intonation is going up. And then to add a tag question, Raúl estudia mucho, ¿no? And also you can say verdad at the end. Número 5, clase, repitan. Enseño a las 9. ¿Enseño a las 9? Enseño a las 9, ¿no? Or also verdad. Número 6, repitan. Luz mira la televisión. ¿Mira la televisión, Luz? Again, one way of answering that. One way of asking that, excuse me. And the tag, Luz mira la televisión, ¿no? Or also verdad, okay? So the intonation, really we're focusing on raising that, raising our tone of our voice at the end, indicate there's a question. And obviously you can combine things. Here we've shown switching some of the verb and sentence, the verb and subject to also indicate a question. You've got the upside down question mark before the question part of each of these phrases, indicating to somebody reading that there's a question coming in. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. You're going to pause this. You're going to number 1 through 5, and you're going to invert the word order 2 different ways for each one of these questions. So number 1, we have La Profesora Cruz prepara el examen. La Profesora Cruz is a subject. Prepara is a verb. El examen is a direct object. So you're going to switch those things, put the verb first, 2 different ways for each of these 5. So go ahead and pause, and then come back when you're done. We'll look at some different options, and we'll practice pronouncing. Okay? Okay, muy bien. There will be different options here, so I'm not saying these are the only options, but let's go through a couple of these. Clase, repitan. Prepara el examen la profesora Cruz. Prepara la profesora Cruz el examen. Okay. Número 2, Sandra y yo necesitamos estudiar. Clase, repitan. Necesitamos estudiar, Sandra y yo. Necesitamos Sandra y yo estudiar. Hopefully on this one you caught that Sandra y yo, right, that's in nosotros form, but that whole thing together is a subject, so that needs to stay together. You wouldn't separate out the subject. You wouldn't say necesitamos Sandra estudiar y yo. That wouldn't make sense. The subject stays together. Número 3, los chicos practican el vocabulario. We have as an option. Practican el vocabulario los chicos. And also, practican los chicos el vocabulario. So as long as that verb is first. Número 4, Jaime termina la tarea. Jaime finishes the homework, the assignment. We have termina la tarea, Jaime. And also, termina Jaime la tarea. So again, verb is first. Número 5, tú trabajas en la biblioteca. One option, ¿trabajas en la biblioteca tú? Other option, ¿trabajas tú en la biblioteca? Okay, so you can see for each of those answers, we put the verb first, indicating there's a question following. Okay, muy bien. Okay, at this point we have a conversation between 2 people, Irene and Manolo. You're going to go in and fill in the conversation with the appropriate questions that would come, and you got to look at the answer that follows it typically to see what the question would have been. So go ahead and pause the video. There are 10 options here. Read through and fill in the blank with the appropriate question, remembering correct pronunciation. And that is your upside down question mark before the question part. All the question words have accents on them, and get your subjects and verbs in the right places, okay? So pause and then come back when you're ready. Okay, so I'm gonna go through, I'm just gonna read this as a dialogue and we'll fill in the answers when they come. Hola Manolo, ¿cómo estás? ¿O qué tal? Bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? Muy bien. ¿Qué hora es? Son las 9. ¿Qué estudias? Estudio historia. ¿Por qué? Porque hay un examen mañana. ¿Te gusta la clase? Sí, me gusta mucho la clase. ¿Quién enseña la clase? El profesor Padilla enseña la clase. ¿Toma psicología este semestre? No, no tomo psicología este semestre. ¿A qué hora regresas a la residencia? Regreso a la residencia a las 11. ¿Deseas tomar una soda? No, no deseo tomar una soda. Deseo estudiar. Manolo, you're dedicated to your studies, but that might not be the best social move. If Irene invites you to go get a soda, go get a soda with her. Okay, so how'd you do? Again, this is a little bit different because we're forming questions, but you've also got to investigate what the question is based on the answer. So anything you did, any consistencies of things you didn't get right, pause, go back and read through that section again. Again, we're looking at upside down question marks, framing question marks, framing the question part of the sentence, accents on the question words, looking for verb first, or having a tag at the end. So different options, but good job. Okay, this one we're going to do one more time, a different exercise. There's going to be a recording. They'll explain the parts here, but you're going to fill in 1 through 8, answering questions based on the question word that's already provided here for you.
2. Cambiar. Change each sentence into a question using the cue in your lab manual. Repeat the correct response after the speaker. Modelo. You hear.
Los turistas toman el autobús.
You see. ¿Quiénes? You say.
¿Quiénes toman el autobús?
So you're basically making a question out of the answer here.
Raquel estudia en la biblioteca.
¿Dónde estudia Raquel?
2. Hay muchos estudiantes en la clase.
¿Cuántos estudiantes hay en la clase?
3. Necesito comprar papel.
¿Qué necesitas comprar?
4. El profesor Villegas enseña matemáticas.
¿Quién enseña matemáticas?
5. Los señores Montero regresan el miércoles.
¿Cuándo regresan los señores Montero?
6. Fernando trabaja en una librería.
¿Dónde trabaja Fernando?
7. Silvia y Cecilia hablan con la profesora.
¿Quiénes hablan con la profesora?
8. Llevo la computadora y unos libros en la mochila.
¿Qué llevas en la mochila?
Okay, so just a simple exercise on replacing the answer with the appropriate question word and forming a question appropriately. So Right, we've looked at quite a few things. We've looked at basic ways of forming questions, either putting the verb first, using a question mark, making a statement with the tone of the pitch going up at the end of the statement to indicate a question, or adding a tag at the end, no or verdad, to ask for a response at the end of a statement. So these will come in handy as you ask things, as you learn how to answer things, and it's really putting together a lot of concepts. So a lot of things coming into this. Good job. Let me know what your questions are and how you're doing. Thanks.